of Ellis Island, the largest immigration processing center in the world. Now, before Ellis Island, there was an immigration processing center right behind you, where that round brown building is. That was the original port that was here from 1811. A lot of
we put all the slaves there. Put all the slaves there.
Because they needed to protect this harbor from the English and stuff. The original immigration processing center there opened up in 1855, and it had nothing to do with keeping immigrants out. What it had to do with was, at that time, keeping immigrants safe from New York hustlers. Until they had one place for the immigrants to go, up until then, boats could land at any number of piers along the bottom. As soon as people got off the boat, they would be inundated by New York hustlers who would meet every boat and be like, hey, you guys need a place to live? Hey, you need a job? Hey, And these people coming in had no idea what was going on. Now, the authorities couldn't be everywhere. So they finally decided to set up one place where the immigrants would be and have a little rest, a little breath, a wash, some information about what they would be facing as soon as they left, these New York hustlers. Now, that immigration processing center operated from 1855 to 1890. And then, with immigration growing. Remember, I told you the city grew population from 60,000 to 4 million, right? And with that immigration processing center lousy with corruption, the federal government finally took over immigration from New York City and opened up the first Ellis Island. The one you're gonna see that we're gonna visit is the second Ellis Island. The first one opened up in 1892. Processed about 1 million people in. Oh, by the way, this immigration processing center, the one that was here, it didn't look like that. That's the original one that they were. That place brought in, saw 5 to 8 million people coming in. 5 to 8 million. Now, the first Ellis Island building, after operating for 5 years, 1897, burned up in a big fire. No one died, but what did get destroyed? All the immigration records dating back to 1855. Those are burned up and gone from history. The new building that you will see very soon, that looks like a palace. That building opened up in 1900. That began the single biggest movement of all the movement in the history of the world. 12 million people came through Ellis Island. That building that looks like a palace, the most important thing, come forward, to know about it is that was only for poor people. Only for poor people. Anybody who could afford a first or a second class ticket did not have to go through Ellis Island. Whatever immigration questions they were asked on board the ship that they came in on. And when the ships, and at this time, these ships, huge amounts of ships were coming from Europe. And those ships could carry 5,000 to 8,000 people. A lot of those people traveled, the poorest people, in steerage, which means the bottom of the boat. It was only those people, fill in spaces. It was only those people who traveled in the bottom of the boat with the cheapest tickets available. That's like me, I do that kind of stuff. They were the only ones who ever had to go to Ellis Island. Like now, immigration 120 years ago, America distrusted the poor people coming in. Same thing as now. If you had enough money, you're welcome. But if you were poor, you had to go through a lot more trouble. Same thing now. And by the way, the anti-immigration feelings that anti-immigrants in America have now, the same language was used for people coming into Ellis Island, 120 years ago. Same thing. And many Americans are connected to people who came through Ellis Island, including me. My great-grandmother came through, a young Hungarian Jewish woman fleeing death. That's what the Jews were fleeing. Other poor people who came through there, Italians, Greeks. Before Ellis Island, even though this was a place of immigration, I told you from the beginning, immigrants were a certain type for hundreds of years, Anglo-Saxons, and of course, the African Americans who were imported. But in terms of the until 1820. But in terms of the Europeans who were coming over in the 300 years before Ellis were Anglo-Saxons mostly. Germans, Scots, Irish, English, French, Scandinavians. Ellis Island years brought the first large numbers of people not yet here in large numbers before. Like Jews, like Italian Catholics, and even the Anglo-Saxons, the Germans, the Irish, but the poor ones. Most people who came through Ellis Island got through into America. However, 2% of people who tried to come through were sent back. And if you were trying to come here and you were sent back, it was completely shattering. It took a lot to get here, years of saving money, dreadful, hellish, horrible boat rides where the people who were going to Ellis were stuck in the bottom of the boat for weeks. Anybody ever see Titanic? Remember the bottom of the boat? Okay. And the rides were horrible. People were throwing up and sick. People were sick and making other people sick. And if you showed up at Ellis Island sick, they might send you back. Now, as I told you, the Statue of Liberty had nothing to do with immigration at the beginning. The idea for the statue just meant celebrating constitutional democracy and no slavery. But her meaning changed, expanded because of, look how close she is to Ellis Island. That wasn't on purpose. Ellis Island was built 6 years later. But her proximity to Ellis Island, and remember, facing the only opening to the harbor. So all of those people who were coming in, hoping for a better life, saw her first. The first part of the new world. After weeks of hellish boat ride, they saw her. And she gave them something to hang their hopes on. Now, I told you that in the first 10 years after the first idea from La Bouillie, nothing happened physically with the statue. But Bartholdi, the designer, fill in spaces if there are spaces. Be like water. They don't want a single rigid
Fluid
line.
and mobile.
Sorry?
Fluid and mobile.
Like the man said, fluid and mobile, but not so mobile that you get away from me. Stay mobile, but kind of, but yeah, fill in spaces and stuff. Yeah, fill in space. Okay, they finally started collecting money to build that statue in 1875. 10 years after the first idea. They formed the Franco-American Union to try to raise money in France for the statue and over here for the pedestal. That was our responsibility, right? In France, they very quickly raised 600,000 francs. The French people were, am I speaking too loud?
No, you good.
The French people, because you're doing,
Nah, you good. No.
yeah, I had somebody yesterday go, be quiet.
Yeah, no, I love it.
The French people
Love the
were
enthusiasm.
wildly excited about this immense project dedicated to liberty. Remember, 2 countries cooperating to build a work of art was unprecedented. I'll tell you what else was unprecedented, brand new. Back then, ordinary people like you and me, working people, did not get a chance to see art. In the 19th century, art, there were no museums for people like us. Art was for rich people. So, the very idea, just the concept of attempting to build a gigantic statue representing liberty and put it in the harbor where everyone could see it, free, accessible to all. This is inherently, an inherently radically democratic idea at a time where people didn't get a chance to see art. And this went into the theme of liberty for people. Again, it was new for them. We're used to that stuff now, right? All right. So, they raised a lot of money in France fast, and they started to build the statue herself. But over here in America, we had a very hard time raising money for the pedestal. And whatever they tried here did not raise much money, including lots of things from the earliest days before she existed. But her design was made by Bartholdi. What? Yeah.
Yeah, the mother.
It's a woman.
A woman births
A
everything.
woman.
The woman is the
Figure of a
portal of
woman.
life. That's how you get here.
She's a woman. The figure of a woman representing a country was common. Yeah, she's a woman, which made it very unique. There was no statue of a woman. In fact, here's some other things that are unique about her. She's the tallest structure, not only statue, but structure on Earth. Here is what she isn't: a king or a queen, a figure from the Bible, a victorious general sitting on a horse. These were what monuments were. But she is a concept, liberty, embodied as a woman, when women, by the way, had no political power at all. The Statue of Liberty is not a monument that says, all right, we won, we got this, like other monuments. She represents what we hope for, the best of us, right? And so she is unique in the world still, let alone 136 years ago. I was saying, we tried to raise money for the pedestal here, but it was not possible. In France, they started building her. Does everybody know that the statue is made out of pieces of copper?
Ooh,
You didn't know that?
I'm enlightened now.
She's made out of copper.
Didn't know that one.
They begin the process of building the statue. Move forward if there's forward to be done. And let me remind you again, when you get through security, my groups 1 to 8, do not go straight to the boat. There's a bench that begins when you get out and goes all the way to where the boat is. I need you, if you are out there before me, to wait by the beginning of the benches. Do not go forward onto the boat, or else we will be waiting for you for an hour. So just wait. Does everybody understand? Yeah. It's I know you do, kid. You've been good. But I'm not sure the adults behind you understand. All right. don't know if I'm going to continue this.
It's okay.
All right. She's made of copper. Now, they begin the process of building the statue by starting with scale models of that statue made out of plaster. So they build 3 scale models, one after another, with the same elements of the statue in proportion. The first model is 4 feet tall. The second model they build 10 feet tall. Finally, they build a third model, 36 feet tall. Finally, they build a full-size model, 151 feet tall, and the entire bulk of her, full-sized out of plaster. Then this is how we get that copper statue. Around the entire body of the statue, top to bottom and all around, the workers build hollow wooden molds surrounding the whole statue. When they're finished and those gigantic wooden molds are taken away from the model, the negative space of the statue's form is in the hollows of those molds. Everybody get the concept?
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
you
thank
do. We'll see.
Yes, thank
Anyway, okay, now here's how we get the copper statue. Into those gigantic hollows, the workers in France hand hammer 200 pieces of copper into those gigantic molds. Every fold in her robe was hammered by hand. Nothing was poured in liquid form into a mold. Everything was hammered by hand. It took 9 years to build the statue up to her 151 foot tall height. When the statue's copper skin was finished, her skin surrounding a hollow inside, her skin is only as thick as 2 pennies,
Damn.
as I am demonstrating with these 2 pennies. This is how thin the Statue of Liberty's skin is, and she is hollow inside. Now that leads to a problem about 4 years into the building of the statue. As they are building her, well, let me say this. I told you just now that the statue's skin is very thin, although she does weigh 450,000 pounds.
Damn.
A thin-skinned big girl. All right. You know what? I'll pick this up on the other side of the thing.
Part 2.
So again, 1 through 8.
Part 3 next.
Wait.